Quick announcement at the end of the video. Make sure to watch till the end. Alright guys, welcome back to another MCreator tutorial. Today what we're going to be looking at is animations and how you can do things similar to this with multiple animations and stuff like that through Blockbench, not GeckoLib. So as you can see here, there's a couple different animations that I have for this particular candy cane. We'll be recreating this the animations and stuff from scratch, and I'll be walking you through how to get it going in MCreator. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started, and we'll start working on the Blockbench actual stuff. So let's go in there and start working on that. Alright, first things first, assuming that you know how to get to the workspace, what you're going to want to do is create a modded entity. So you're going to need this workspace right here. If you're not in this workspace, then it's probably not going to work. So make sure that you have the modded entity one, which is this one right here. We're already in a modded entity workspace, so we don't need to worry about that. Next thing you're going to need to do is actually make something that you can animate. So create some cubes, which are things that you would normally do for Blockbench, and then make sure to put them under a single group, which we'll be using to animate with. So as you can see here, I have two groups. The opposite corners or sides are for each group. So basically that's how I've set up this particular one. I've also named all the cubes and the groups differently, so make sure that they are all lowercase. They can include numbers and underscores, but no characters that are not English or anything like that. So I'll make sure that it's set up like this. And then what we can do is, after you've textured it and everything, go to the Animate tab, and then you'll see something like this. And I already have two animations in here. We're going to be starting these from scratch, so I'm going to be deleting these. And you should have just something like your groups on this side for your animations. And you should have a timeline down at the bottom, which will allow you to animate the things. And over here is where you set up your animations. We'll be doing that. I'm not sure if there's really anything that you really need to do with the placeholders. I haven't really messed around with that. I don't think there's anything that you would really need for MCreator specifically for variable placeholders, so you can probably just ignore this tab altogether. But the first thing that we're going to do is there's modded ones as well, like modded animations. We can add animation, and forget how it was set up. I did come across it a couple times. I think there was, yeah, apply preset animation. So you can right click on a group and then select the animation, go preset, and then you can use any of the built-in presets from I think Minecraft or things like that. So there's these ones here that you can use. We're going to be creating them from scratch, which is probably what most of you are going to be doing. So we're going to delete that one group or that animation thing. We'll start from scratch. So the first thing that we want to do is make sure that we have our animation name. This needs to be something that is not going to interfere with the code for Java, as well as be unique for when you're going to be using your animations and stuff like that. So when you're naming these, I highly suggest doing either the abbreviation of your mod characters, so like your mod name, or just leaving it as anim, which is like for the first four letters of animation, and then you can do something that is like float or whatever. Now, when I was doing the float animation in this one, I couldn't actually just call it float because float is actually used in code in Java, so it wasn't showing up and when I was selecting the animation. So this is why you probably want to make sure that you have something before that when you're actually naming it. You can use underscores if you want. Same thing as the group names. You can do underscore numbers, I think, and letters for English characters as well. I'm just going to leave it as one string. This isn't actually going to be anything people are going to be seeing, so it's not going to be a huge issue if we just keep it one string. So first things first, I'm going to call this one float. And if I can spell it correctly, there we go. Now the next thing that we have is the loop mode. These are basically the types of cycles that it's going to have when it's playing the animation. So play once, obviously it's just going to play the animation once. Hold at last frame, so it's going to play the animation and then stop at that particular animation at the last frame of it. And loop will constantly make it do something. So in this case, because we want it to float, I want it to loop. And we're going to just leave it as that. Now there's a whole bunch of other settings here. You don't necessarily need to do any of these. We're going to be just creating everything from scratch, so don't worry about this stuff. You can experiment with it if you want to. I'm not too worried about it. I didn't use it when I was testing it, so we're just going to click confirm, and we're going to have our animation here. Now we're going to start with this one, and then this one's like float, right? So we want it to kind of go up and down. So when we're actually selecting our groups, now you might not have groups on here, so we want to select our animation, and then we want to select our groups, and you'll see them pop up on the animation timeline. So we'll move this up a little bit more so you can see that. So the next thing that we need to do is actually create a position. We have like 3 different things that we can create with this. We have the rotation, position, and scale. Those are our animation types that we can actually utilize. There's also a box right here that says global rotate in global space. Now, I'm not sure what that means. I haven't really messed around with it too much, but when you're creating your animations and stuff, make sure that you're under the edit tab that your groups are going to be center for where you want the animation to rotate around or float from. If you don't do that, it's going to look a little bit wobbly and probably not aligned like you would hope. So looking at the axis point right in the center of the screen here, what you can see is I've basically assigned both of the axes right in the center of the block. So this is for the groups, and I've also done that for all the cubes as well. So I didn't know if the cubes would probably require it. I don't think they do, but the groups make sure that they're where you want it to rotate around if that's the case. So that's basically it. So we're going to go to the animation tab, and then we're going to start animating. Now for this one, we're going to use position. Now we're going to start with our first frame just by adding it to pressing the add button and making sure that it's on the 0 mark for the animation type. Now as you scroll this little line around, this is going to be where the animations are going to be put. So the next thing that I want to do is go to the 0.5. Now you might want to play around with how fast, like the closer they are, the faster the animation will be. The further apart, the longer it will take to complete the animation. Everything between is going to automatically do the rotation and stuff like that. So you don't need to have one for every line or anything like that. You just need to specify where you want the animation frames to happen. So the next one that I want to do is I want to make sure that this group, the group 1, is going to go up and the group 2 is going to go down. So I think this is great. Group 1, yeah. So we're on group 1. We can select group 2 as well. So I'm going to go group 1, and then we're going to create another frame here for the position, and we're going to create one for the other position. And we're going to go with group 1, and then we're going to make sure that, as you can see right now, it's not doing anything when we play it. You can hit the space bar to do that, or you can pause and then reset the frames. So we're going to actually go to our frame here, and we're going to select that frame, and we're going to bring it up for 4 pixels. And then with the other one, what we're going to do is we're going to go down 4 pixels. So that will kind of give a effect that it's kind of animating. Now you might notice that it will kind of jolt at the end. That's because we haven't set up the full animation cycle yet. So we're going to need another one at 1, 1.5, and then 2 for the final reset one. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that again. Create another position one, and we're going to go to 1. And as you notice, what we're at is we're still at that last frame when we create that new frame here. So we're going to bring this one down 4 pixels, and then for 2, we're going to bring that one back up to 4 pixels. And then we're going to do that again for the 5 or 1.5. So we're going to create 1 and then 1 here, and then we're going to make this one, just make sure that I have it all set up. So we're going to bring this one, I think, up. So we're going to bring this one up. And it's already in the up position for some reason. I'm not sure why. So sometimes you need to redo things. Right now it's in the down position. So I'm going to try creating that frame again. And now it's proper. So I think what might have been happening was I might have been, the bar wasn't exactly where I wanted it. So we're going to create that next frame, and then we're going to go ahead and do another position one. And we're going to increase this one up by 4 and decrease that other one down by 4. And then we're going to go to our next frame. So this is 2, and this will be our ending frame. So we're going to do a position here and a position there. And now, if I did everything correctly, let's just play the animation and see if it works. Okay, so it does look like it's not doing what I need it to on that last frame. So let's just double check. So it's not going down. So we're going to need to set our frame here. We're going to bring this one down 4, and we're going to bring this one up 4. So like that. And now it should loop pretty smoothly. So let's go ahead and try. Yeah, so there we go. We got a complete smooth frame for the floating animation. And now that we're going to do that, I'm going to quickly get the rotation one. It's not much different for the process of actually doing that. You just need to use the rotation one instead. Now, when I cut back in, I'll show you just the animations that I have set up. One other thing that I should probably add is you can select both of these, or select multiple animations by hitting Shift and then selecting both animations, and then making sure that your bar is over the animation, going copy, and then you can actually go to the part that you want to place the animations, and you can go ahead and paste them. This sometimes helps with keeping the animation type from the last frame as well. As you can see here, it's kept the animation part. So that might help with things like rotation and stuff when you're working with the animations itself. As you can see here, it's at the same thing, so I can start animating this last frame. I just wanted to add that quickly between before I'm finished, because that might actually help with a lot of troubleshooting and stuff like that. So just wanted to add that quickly. All right, so now that we got both of these animations done, we have one that floats. So we can actually play the animations like this, and by clicking the play button at the top here. And if we want to test it with another animation, we can actually select the 0 button, and we can see how it will actually work with the animation for the other one. So as you can see, we're selected the first animation, and we're testing it with the other one. And now we're just testing the other one, and now we're just testing the rotate animation. So we can also test that with the other animation as well if we want to do it from that side. So that's basically how we can play the animations. We got both of these set up now, and both of these are good to go. We're going to go back to our edit tab, and then we're just going to make sure that all our textures and everything are set up. We can actually minimize these. We don't need to. Now, this would be a good time to back up your progress. So if you haven't done that already, make sure to save the project as, and then save it to somewhere safe on your computer, maybe on a flash drive or something like that. And then you'll have a backup. So when if Minecraft like updates or whatever and changes the type of Java file, you'll have something to come back to with all the animations and stuff that you've worked on. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to the export, and we're going to export our Java entity first. And we're just going to leave this as the default name. and I'm going to save that to my desktop. And then for exporting the animations, what we're going to need to do is we need to go to export under the file tab and then go export modded entity animations. So by default, it's going to give you the option for all your animations. We have both of these here. We can leave these checked and it will play both animations at the same time. Now, this would be the usual way that you would implement the animations and stuff for MCreator. This is also the simplest way, but the problem with that, we want these animations to play separately as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to just export one and then export the other one. So we're going to start with a rotate one and we're going to confirm, and then I'm just going to call this one anime or anim rotate, and we're going to save this as a Java file as well, so it's a animation. And I'm going to do that for the other one for the floating animation as well. So we're going to do the uncheck the floating one, or the rotate one, confirm, and then we're going to name this as anim float, and we're going to save that as well. Now, if you selected all your animations to play, now there might be some issues with that if your animations are basically doing similar things. It might mess up the animations. Like we saw with the animation tab here, they were playing just fine when we selected all of them like this, but in some cases when you have multiple things doing like open and close animations or animations that will do different things for different purposes and stuff like that, this method for doing all of them won't work. We will need to separate the animations and do a little bit of coding in the animation file to make these work, because if we import them right now for both of these animations, it's going to have the same class name, and we're not going to be able to actually import the second one. So with that being said, what we're going to do is we're just going to open this file up with something like Notepad++. If you don't have Notepad++, you can open it up with, I believe, just regular Notepad or something like that, or your default document editor. Just make sure that it can save as the same file type. So I think like if you were to open it with like Notepad, it should work as well. It's just not as easily to read all this stuff, but I'm going to just open these with now it's not doing the open with, whoops. One sec. All right, so I fixed my issue. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it with Notepad and then we're going to have our animation frames down here. We don't need to worry about that part. We just need to worry about the first line where it says public class candy animation, and if we open up our other animation for the float, you'll notice that going between these, it has the same class name. So that's not going to work for what we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to input the type of animation that I'm basically going to be using for this. So a good way to do that is just to use your animation name. So I can go with like Annie or float. And with this, what you want to do is you don't want any spaces, underscores, or anything like that. This should only be characters, English characters, and it should always capitalize after the first word. So in this case, candy is our first word, and then we're going to do float for this one. Oh, this is the rotate file, so let's make sure that this is set up correctly. Rotate. And then for the other one, what we're going to do is we're going to go float. So these are two separate names now, and it's the same format that it was before, so we can actually go ahead and save both of these using that button up there where it had multiple save icons. And now both of these are saved. So what we can do now is we can import these as animation files into MCreator. So let's go, and I should have the texture for that thing here as well. So we'll be starting everything from scratch for animation. Let me just hop into MCreator. All right, so as you can see here, I have a whole bunch of different procedures for the one that I had before. We have one that sets MBT. Now, if you're working with animations and the entity goes through a portal, the MBT is going to be wiped. So you would want to use sync data instead, which is stored to the entity as a variable. So I just use this for the demonstration purposes because I wasn't planning on it to go through portals or anything like that. I also got these particular conditional ones for each animation as well. We'll be getting to that in a little bit. And then I have this procedure here for the actual animation, changing the animation type and stuff like that. So we'll be working on something very similar to this. And the first thing that we're going to do is just wipe this entire file project and delete all this. So we're just going to click the delete button and we're going to start from scratch with this. So I have our texture imported. We're going to delete the models and animations. So there's an animation tab just on the left of the models one, or pardon me, the right. So what we're going to do is we're going to import our texture, and then we're going to go ahead and import our animations first. So what we're going to do is we're going to go import animation, go to where they are stored, and we should have our two animations here. And when we're importing the second one, you might get an error if the class name isn't the same. Now, because we changed the class name for both of these to have their own unique class name, it works. But if you don't have the same class name, or if you have the same class name, you'll get an error saying the class name needs to be different. So that's why we changed the class name. All right, now we can import our Java entity model, and that's the candy one. Now you'll be presented with overriding animations or canceling override. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cancel the override, so we don't use the built-in animations or any animations that are part of the MCreator application. So we should have the entity model, our animations here for it, and our texture. We can actually create the living entity now. So we're going to go ahead and create a living entity, and we're just going to call it candy. I know it's a little bit, when this video comes out, it's going to be after Christmas, but close enough. Then what we're going to do is we're going to select our model down here. We're going to make sure that it has a name for it. And everything else here is pretty much fine. I'm not too worried about any specifics for this particular tutorial. Model layers, we're not going to worry about. Animations, we will need two animations, one for our floating one and then one for our rotating one. We want to make two conditions for when this is playing, otherwise it's going to play at the same time. And we're going to go ahead and just set this one to float, and we're going to create a animation here. We're going to save this as a return true for now, and that will make sure that it will always play the animation because I don't have the variables set up just yet. So we're going to just copy this or export this procedure, and we're going to do that for the other one as well. So we're going to import the other one. So we're going to save that, and then we're going to go ahead and do this one for rotate. And then we're going to go ahead and import that other procedure that we just made. So this is going to basically play the animation all the time. We don't want that. We want to actually add sync data for this. So it's going to play the animation at a certain period. So for this, we have a few different options for sync data. We can do integer, logic, or string. I'm just going to use logic for this one because we only have really two things that we need to worry about if the animation is playing or if the animation is not playing. So a logic would work perfectly for that. We're going to call this one rotate, and then we're going to create another one called float. And this is where the problem comes in, because float is actually a command in Java. We can't use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete that other one, and we're going to do anim rotate, And this is the easiest way to get around that issue too. So anim rotate, and then we're going to do anim float. And now you can see that it's not going to cause a problem when we're setting up the animation. Now we could set both of these animations to play at the same time. If we want to do that, we can just enable those two blocks and it will always play when the entity first is spawned. Now we can go back to our animation tab and edit these files. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to entities, data, and then we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and we're going to use custom entity of type and a logic data parameter, and then where our value is. Now both of these are logic, so we're going to use the logic one. And we haven't actually set these up yet, so we actually need to save the entity first before we can actually do that. So we're going to just go ahead and skip through all this stuff for the time being. We're not going to worry about any of this. I'm going to actually disable the animation, or the what do you call it, the AI, and we're going to go to spawning, make sure this is disabled, and we're going to save that. We need, okay, it gave us an error, so we need to have an entity texture. I forgot to do that. So if we go to that, we can select our texture, and then we can save this. Now that we have that, we can go ahead and edit our procedures. So this is the floating one, and we're going to want those blocks that I had before. So we're going to go all the way down to the bottom here, and we're going to go set our entity that we want the animation for, and then we're going to set the animation type. So basically what this is doing right now is it's returning if the value of this is true. Now we don't necessarily need to test if the condition is true or not. If you add a block directly onto the return block, it's always going to test if it's a true state. Now if it's not true, then it's not going to be playing, so it'll basically return false automatically. So we don't even need an if statement for that. We just need these kinds of setups for both of these particular procedures. So we're going to do the other one for the rotate one, and we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, grab the logic one that we just created, and we're going to set this up for the rotate one. And that part's done. We can now start working on our particular, what do you call it, the timer and stuff like that. Now, if you wanted to add a timer that's not MBT, what we can do is we can add an integer, and we're going to call this animation, might have butchered that, timer, and we're going to leave it as an integer, and we're going to set the default integer value to 0, so we don't need to worry about that part. Then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that when the entity spawns, we're going to set the animation timer to 0. So we're going to do on internal entity spawn, and then what we're going to do is we're going to grab the entity data thing down at the bottom here, and we're just going to make sure that it's set to 0. We're going to set our entity candy, and we need to save, we need to save that again. So one sec, so we need to get that back up there. Set that animation variable up again as an integer, default 0. We'll save that entity, and then we should be able to select this now. So we're going to save that as our internal value. When the entity is spawned, it's going to be 0. We're going to make sure that it's 0 that way. And then we're going to go back to our triggers, and then we're going to run our animations through the entity tick update. So we're going to select this one. Now I'm going to want to test, because this is constantly going to be playing, we don't need to worry about the animation stopping and having to start it up again. So when you're selecting your animation, we're just doing a loop for this one. So this method would be fine. But if you want a single animation to play once, then you could do play once, and then you might have to do a loop. If you're doing a hold frame, then it's basically the same thing. So I'm just going to delete that. We don't need to have that one because we didn't do anything with it. All right, so when we're doing this, what we need to do is we need to test for our data that we created our timer on. And we're going to test if that timer is 0 or less than 0. And the reason why we're testing if it is equal to or less than 0 is basically if it happens to somehow go below 0, we want to make sure that this part updates. So we're going to just leave that as it is, and then we're going to do an else statement. Now, if this value is above 0, this is where the else statement is going to come into, and that's where we're going to run our timer from, right? So we're going to go ahead and grab the data part here, and we're going to select our candy and then our timer. And we want to also subtract that value by 1. Now, you can't use point forms with this because it's an integer, so integers are only full numbers, so we can't use point forms. So if you're working with a timer, make sure that the timer is only a solid number like this. So we're going to add our get entity for the data, and we're going to decrease that value by 1. Now in here, what we want to do is we want to also set that value to another time, so when this kicks in. So I'm going to set this to like 200, and that's going to make the timer set to 200, which is like 10 seconds or something like that. So after we do that, what we can do is we can go ahead and actually randomize our animations. So I'm going to make 2 if statements, but first we're just going to utilize this, and we're going to go ahead and set up our random block here. We're going to use an integer for this one, and we're just going to set the value to either 0 or 1. So this will be either true or false, basically. And then what we're going to do is we're going to test if this value is 1, and then we're going to make an else statement. So if it's false, then we want to do something down here. And we're going to do this for both of the animations, but why do this twice when we can actually do it just once and make it a little bit easier? So we're going to go ahead and select our candy entity and our parameter for rotate, and we're going to, now this is 1, so this is going to be true, and then below we want to set this to false. Now we can duplicate this whole entire procedure that we just created, and we're going to go ahead and set this one up for the float one. So basically what's going on here is we're going to test if that timer is equal to 0 or less than 0. And then if that's true, what it's going to do is going to basically reset or change the animations for both of these. Now, because these are its own if statements, these are going to work independently from each other. So we can have like a mix and match animations. Sometimes there'll be no animations. Sometimes there will be only one animation of either one of these, or sometimes there will be both. And then we're also setting the timer to 200 for 10 ticks or 10 seconds, which we're going to basically count down if that value isn't 0, which it's going to be above 0. So it's going to decrease the timer until it gets to 0 again. So that's basically all that's doing. And then our initial value should be, that didn't actually set because we didn't set it properly up with the thing. So we're just going to make sure that that's linked. So our other 2 procedures, which are these playback ones, these are just making sure that the animation will play when this is actually true. So this is our rotate one, and then this is our float one. All right, so we're currently in a new world. I just didn't want any conflict with the other entity that I had in the other world that I had. So we're going to go to the entity tab. We're just going to plop one of these down. And as we can see, the animation is playing. And we're just going to wait until the animation updates. And now you can see the animation has changed. So now it's in the floating one. The other one's disabled. And see if this actually rotates or sets up. So the animation sometimes gets a little wonky. This might be due to the timer being on the using sync data. I'm not sure if it's just running on server side or client side, but this is the rotating one. Now it's going into the floating and rotating one. So as you can see here, it's kind of floating and rotating. And it should go back just to the floating. So we have different animations that are playing here, as you can see here. Now the transition's a little bit more choppy, but I haven't really programmed any of that in to make sure that it was going to have a smooth transition. You would probably want animations for the transitions as well, so something between the two animations could work, and then you could play that animation once, and then once that was finished, you could basically transition into the other one. But basically that's it. That's the animations in a nutshell. This isn't using GeckoLib or anything like that, so this is just strictly vanilla without any third-party plugins or anything like that. So hopefully you learned something today. If you have any questions, you can hop on my Discord channel and ask in the comments or on the help channel for their MCreator, and there's pretty good community that will help with the questions and stuff. And if it's too much of a complicated issue, I keep my eyes open, and we also have a place where you can share your minimum resource example for your workspace if you have issues, and we can help you with that if it's too of a complex issue for anyone to help in the community. So there's always that as a resource as well. Outside of that, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, comment down below, rate the video, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Peace out. I have this friend that has their own server hosting company, and they have the lowest prices in the server hosting community, and they've given me a promo code to give to you guys. So if you want to get a good deal for the first month, then you can use the promo code Northwest for 45% off your first month. Offer expires July 19th, 2034. The link to their site is in the description.